Don't get frustrated. Try to understand that every project is a learning experience, and it's going to be in a culmination of several years of experience before you're going to be able to make something that is going to be aesthetically pleasing. Um, so that it's trying not to get frustrated and understanding how expensive the hobby is.
That's good advice. Really good advice. Um, you spoke earlier about how you're working it. You're really onto the like the basket hilts and the shinovas and things like that right now. What is it about those swords just sort of draws into it? It's just
And yeah, there's an elegance to the Schiavona.
mm,
I like. I'm really drawn to mostly the 15th to 17th century weapons. There's an elegance to them that I find rare.
mm. Have you ever gone like done a real deep dive and gone from like smelting your own iron and steel and hammering it out?
I would really love to try to do a bloomery.
Mm,
Um, I've tried to work on a puck of woots, and
mm.
that didn't work out very well at all. But those are some of the things that I'd like to move into next. Would be crucible steel and blooming my own iron.
Hmm. Yeah, that'd be really. Uh, I remember watching the uh, PBS episode for the armor that they made that Jeff Lawson made, where they
Yeah.
did the bloomery and bloomed their own iron. That'd be pretty neat to do that with a sword, a sword too. Takes a whole other set of skills, I'm guessing, than using the pre-made. Um, but that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else could we talk about today? Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything sword related you'd like to bring up, or
You know, um, I don't know.
you don't
Uh,
know?
yeah, so my most of my journey has been from a very artistic point of view, um, instead of a historic point of view. I'm at best an amateur historian, mostly an artist. Um, so it's really like Peter talked about it, the geometry of blades and getting your recipe right is is something that so many people overlook. Most of those, we talked about the sharp bar of iron, and what actually makes a sword. Um, I think a lot of people lose that in the aesthetic when they try to reproduce many of the weapons that we see.
So actually, you have a question coming in from Peter Johnson. He wants to know, what do you think is the most valuable opportunity and most interesting challenge a swordsmith faces?
I think the challenge that a swordsmith, I think, modernly faces is economics. Being able to afford to learn and develop the skill and experience to make a sword that you can sell. That's why after 15 years, only do commissions. Or I make something and somebody sees it on Facebook and wants it. I'm not a professional swordsmith. I have a job that will support my hobby. I think that is probably the biggest challenge modernly is the economics of being a swordsmith. Um, Opportunities today, I think you're going to find are going to be difficult or rare. Um, there is the prop maker for entertainment. There is the exclusive sword maker for collectors. And other than that, the market is filled with manufacturers who make everything on a CNC milling machine and have parts cast in China and then are assembled in, whatever country of origin, it is going to come from. So there's no way to compete with that range from your $200 katana to even your $1,000 ANA sword. Um, there is no place for you to. There's not a place of competition there. So I think it is a real struggle to find some of those opportunities to make yourself successful as a swordsmith. I don't mean to be discouraging, but unfortunately, I think Forged in Fire has been great for bringing this craft, this idea of handmade, this idea of bringing back almost an art that's gone away a lot. We see the market flooded with crappy stainless steel blades from China, and it's just something that I find it hard to compete with.
Peter says, perhaps it is the fact a sword is made by hand by an individual that is the greatest opportunity. A challenge is to make this into a strong point. Make it into a
Absolutely, yeah, I absolutely agree. The challenge is, personally anyway, is to be able to make that sword, to be able to do something yourself, to be able to make something that is aesthetically pleasing that somebody else would want. Those are real challenges. And I see as starting out as a bladesmith, this is a direction you want to go. Really, it has to be a passion, because there's not a lot of economic return.
No, I know that feeling by heart. So would you ever, if Forged in Fire came back, or if another new show came on and said, hey, would you do it again? Would you do it again?
Sure, it's fun. I had a great time. And in reality, I mean, nobody knew who I was before Forged in Fire, because I do this as a hobby. Since then, now I have quite a long waiting list for swords.
It's always a good thing to have, I guess, as long as you continue to make them. So the big question of the session, and we sort of touched on it a little bit, but your all-time favorite sword. What is your all-time favorite sword?
Oh, the all-time favorite sword that I've had any part of making, or just
in general? You can break it down in both too, if you want.
There is a falchion that was owned by what's his name of the Medici? I cannot remember his name, that I think is just gorgeous. But of the swords that I've made, I really like the Katzbalger. That was a project that me and Ugo did. Is probably one of my. I have it here behind me. Stay.
Nice.
But this is probably my favorite so far.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Somebody asked earlier what you use for your sword racks.
What I use for my sword rack?
Yeah.
Hooks from Home Depot. It's nothing really special.
That's what I use too. They seem to work. Everybody tells me to get guitar hooks. I'm like, but I don't know, guitar hook.
Yeah.
Everyone's oohing and ahhing over that Katzbalger now. They're saying it's gorgeous. He does. If you go to his Facebook page or Instagram, I think you have an Instagram too, don't you?
Yeah.
And look at his work. He does make gorgeous work. So it's not that I have the pennies, but it'd be worth every penny to get one from him if I did, because it really is outstanding work. So we're gonna open this up for some questions. If people have any questions for you, we'll see if we want to try. Either they can type it in the chat, or if they want to go under the reactions and raise their hands, I'll let them open up there. I'll tell them to ask them to unmute their mic. Anybody's?
Well, I have a question for you. Hi, I've enjoyed your talk. I think this is great, and I've been a sword aficionado since I was a little kid, and wish I could make one, but I know that's not going to happen because I've seen how hard it is. But you're an artist, so I understand. As an artist, you probably want to design your own, but you also want them to look comparable and stand up to historical examples. So my question is, have you been successful in designing your own sword and having it stand out and be unique, but still, in your mind anyway, fit with the historical period that it comes from. I keep finding myself, when I sketch a sword, it winds up looking like, a typical type 15 or a type 18B or something like that. Maybe Oakshot has ruined it for everybody by quantifying so many different kinds that you can't escape that. But my question stands, how do you do, as an artist, how do you make it your own besides the struggle of just creating it?
Well, that's always the challenge, is making something your own. And I take from a lot of different resources. When I decide to make a sword, I will do a lot of research. I will look at as many, let's say, type 12 swords that I can, to get an idea of the direction that I want to go. And then from that point, I want to make sure whatever I do doesn't go beyond what would be acceptable for something that it would fit within the typology. And then that's where I would start from. So it's mostly modification of hilts and guards and fuller arrangement and things like that.
All right, good, thanks.
James Elmsley says the falchion is for Cosimo di Medici. It's the Walls collection.
Thank you very much. Yes, that is the falchion.
Anton Stark asks, and this goes back to the discussion about the game swords and video games, things like that. Says, aren't swords and games and cinema derivations of that shared history? Precisely. It's like, if they're sort of part of that, why do you think they don't have any value? It's like they're a valid representation of the ethos of the sword as much as fantasy swords in 14th century manuscripts were.
Well, I see, let's say, an oversized, katana that would weigh 22 pounds as not very, other than it being a memento to that video game, like the God of War blades. Other than that, I don't see them they don't hold for me the same kind of, like I said, this shared experience of what that sword represents anymore. It is now taken and stylized to a sense of impracticality, where it becomes a comical representation of something from history. And that's the part where I start to lose interest.
Let's see here. Says follow up on the fantasy sword question. For a myth or a fantasy legend game setting, what would a magic sword of your design look like, and what powers would you give it?
What would it look like? Oh God. Probably like a giant Zweihander or something like that. And I don't know about magic power. Maybe I'm not creative enough, or my imagination is not there. It's hard to say.
Let's see here. Does anybody else have a question they'd like to ask? No, anybody? What if you could go into a museum? What museum would you like to go to and just try to drop one of your swords off and see if it blends in?
I'd like to sneak in behind Toby and try to leave something in the Wallace. That'd be fun.
There you go. I'm sure Toby wouldn't mind at all. So somebody said that's a thank you. See if anybody notices.
Good luck getting into England with a sword.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be hilarious. So to walk in, just drop something off, and see if one of the guides starts talking about it, and drop off one of the God of War blades. This belonged to Henry V.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
I had a comment also. You were talking about there was a question about fantasy swords, but I was also thinking about some fantasy weapons that have disappointed me. I was a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings movies and the books, of course, and I read The Hobbit, and I liked the fact that they made movies about the Hobbit, but the dwarves' weapons were, I thought, a big mistake. I understand where they were going with these huge, burly, masculine things, but really a hammer that, unless it's made out of hollow tinfoil, just you can't wield it. Nobody can. And I think that's, I'm guessing that's where you were going with your talk about fantasy weapons, that they're so impractical that you would have to be a demigod to wield them.
Or magic.
Or magic, yeah.
If that's the explanation, yeah.
Sorry, Ken, you can bring that up to Peter Lyon tomorrow when he's on discussing. You can ask him about that.
I don't want to embarrass him, but I will.
So another person says, what museum or collection would you most like to visit?
Oh, if I could, I can't get the KM8, which is it called? I can't say the words in German.
Oh,
It's the KMH or the KM out. What's it called? I
The Kunsthistorisches Museum.
there you go.
Yeah. Vienna, is that the one? I think Vienna.
Yes.
Yeah. I would also put a plug in for the. It's a little closer to you. It's in Massachusetts. The Worcester Art Museum now has pretty much the whole collection from the Higgins Armory Museum, which closed down a few years ago in the same city. But that's how I got back into, after a many decades drought of no medieval arms and armor, I got back into the Higgins about 20 years ago and started going there, and it's just a fantastic collection.
Yeah, the Higgins is great, and it's really fantastic they were able to save most of the collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to get in as be a guest speaker for them. So if anybody has any connections.
Great. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, David, the Higgins is back on display at the Worcester Art Museum. They've opened up, and they're either building the new wing, or they've opened up a new wing recently that is dedicated. It's called the Higgins Armory Collection at the Worcester Art Museum. It's a really great collection. So,
wow, that's really exciting. I had no idea.
And they also, it is an art museum, but they are doing a lot about the actual process of creating arms and armor. So it's not just what's artistic and beautiful and embellished, but also kind of what's the art in the actual form, which is nice. It's nice. It's not just the stuff with the gold leaf.
So back to Nick. Alex Hahn asks, heraldry, how important is it to you in what you do?
Heraldry?
Yes.
So I've made a few swords for some of the reenactment community, for the Society for Creative Anachronism. They have their society is broken up into different kingdoms. They cover different territories in the United States. And I've done a few territorial and kingdom swords that are just about heraldry. And they've been great. I've had a lot of fun with that. From resists on the blade to, their entire heraldry carved into the handles. And it's been a lot of fun. But as far as, I think there's been two or three of those that have been pretty recent. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Let's see, does anybody else have any other questions? Well, looks like maybe not. So we still have a few more minutes. Trying to think. So, being in the SCA, as you say you are, I'm actually also a member of the SCA as well. Um, you know, teaching is a big part of the SCA as well. Have you ever taught classes on bladesmithing or armor making?
So it's hard to teach a class. Um, I work in a shop at my home, and but I've taught several individuals on one-on-one basis on how to make a knife or a sword. Um, a few on Damascus, and I've done a couple of like Warhammer workshops with a few friends. But it's something that's really kind of tough to do. It's not very easy to be mobile, to take your shop anywhere else, and I really don't have the space to do that kind of teaching.
I understand the lack of space to do things like that. I'm jealous that you even have a workshop. I don't.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it is tough to get your stuff out like that. Um, Anyone else have any other questions for Nick? Oh, someone says, "Damn right, it's hard to teach a class." Faye Sterling said that. Says she's always in awe of people who manage to teach classes at like every local event.
Yeah,
I do.
it's quite hard. I mean, I've done lots of one-on-one teaching, but classes are almost impossible.
Now, just because I love this discussion, I could keep babbling all day. I don't want to be a hog about it, though. About classes, I live in the Northeast, where luckily there are a lot of places that have forges, and they have guest artists who show up to teach the classes. And that's the venue that I've been lucky enough to make the most of. There's a place in Brookfield, Connecticut that has a forge, and they had Matthew Berry, who is a local swordsmith, and he's also been on Forged and Fire and Champion. And so he taught a knife making class there. There's the Guilford Art Center down in Guilford, Connecticut. I live in Connecticut, but there are these places that are around. I'm sure, California is a settled place. You must be opportunities for that too. And just because it's been so good for me to do that, I would love it if you'd have the opportunity to teach the classes without having to lug your anvil around in the back of your car.
There is a place here in Los Angeles called Adams Forge that teaches basic blacksmithing skills, and I think they have a couple of knife smithing courses.
Is that in California? What is the? So it's being from the East, born and raised in the East Coast here. History for me goes back a little farther than history for the modern Californians moving out there. What is sort of the atmosphere of medieval reenactment out in California?
It's quite big, actually. It's quite large here in Los Angeles. We have a very large SCA group. There's quite a big Battle of Nations group here. There's, it's I'm not sure what it's like in other cities, but versus, both California and Southern California and Northern California both have quite a big community of medieval reenactors.
See, somebody, Alex Hahn also asks, do you see any conflict while making Japanese and European swords? Are there two different cultural traditions and mindsets? Do you approach them differently because of that?
Well, I've never had a chance to make a traditional Japanese sword. So there is it is absolutely different culturally, the way the emphasis is put on the swordsmith and that in the Japanese culture versus what I understand in European. But as a modern maker, no, it just has two different challenges of two different types of swords. Like I said before, every sword has its own challenge in making its shape, or its distal taper, its geometry, its edge geometry, its sweet spot, its balance point. All of those are different. So when I look at, I don't really see a difference from approaching making a katana versus me making a longsword. I'm making something more like a saber when I'm making a katana than I am when I'm making a longsword. It's just differences in the mechanics of of making the sword versus any kind of cultural difference or emphasis on me as a modern maker. It makes really no difference to me.
Someone asked if you ever considered doing stuff for YouTube.
You know, I'm a cameraman for a living, and that kind of sounds like work. So
I actually did when I was researching for this and looking at your bio. I had to look up what a Steadicam operator actually does, and it's not easy work that you do for a living. I mean,
no, it's not. I wear a 65-pound rig, and I have to run, and because whenever you use a Steadicam, it's because someone is running
yeah.
or chasing somebody or something like that. So yeah, it's quite a physical job.
Have you found smithing as bulked you up, or is it the opposite way around? Has doing the Steadicam made you fit enough to be a swordsmith, or is being a swordsmith help keep you fit to be a Steadicam operator?
You know, they're just a different set of aches and pains.
Yeah.
But I go to the gym a lot for both of them, so that probably helps more than anything.
Somebody says that must be good training for harness fighting. That must be.
Yeah, absolutely.
It must be really good because you strap on a suit of armor and it probably doesn't just feel any different for you from being to work.
Yeah, it's no big deal. Yeah, I can fight all day with that thing. You know, but you look at real weapons, 2-3 pounds.
Yeah.
You can swing that all day. You know, swords aren't heavy. That's such a myth. So it's being physically fit. It helps. It's hot. It's tiring. It's bad on your elbows. It's bad for your shoulders. It's bad for your feet. Learning how to swing a hammer so your elbow doesn't explode was one of the first things that I had to relearn. Have had really, really, really bad tendonitis that I had to seek medical help to get fixed before I learned how to swing a hammer correctly. So little things like that are very, very important.
That's what bad elbow, ruining their elbows. That's basically what stopped Robert McPherson, wasn't it? Yeah, from doing things. Which is a shame.
He's back. He's back, but just I think he's
sort of. Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
Well, he's his name is enough where he can basically do whatever he wants, and you know,
Robert makes amazing, amazing things.
He does. He does. Well, I think we're going to wrap this session up, and I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
No, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it was a great talking with you. And we're going to take another hour break because this session slot did not get filled. So we'll be back at 3:00. And we'll be talking with 3:00 Eastern time. Just let me make sure I get that right. And we'll be talking with Evan Ringo and Beth Hammer, who are two Bohurt fighters. So they're going to talk about the importance of sword sports. And so we'll be back in an hour. I'm going to mute everything and turn the camera off. And again, this is all a fundraising event for History Live Northeast, the 501c3 nonprofit I run. If you like what we're doing here and you'd like to help support us more, check us out on our website at historylivenortheast.org, and always accepting donations. So thank you very much. Bye, Nick. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. All right, that was done.
Yeah. Right. I gotta see if people would like to log off again, and I'll log you back in when we start going for the next session. Be great.